Hey guys, Dave here for the Reptile Channel, HerpersTV. So, consider 30 years ago. The crested gecko was actually listed as one of the Earth's extinct animals. And then in 1994, during a storm, one of them actually fell on a skylight at a research center in New Caledonia, and the species was thus rediscovered. Now flash forward to today. Look at how many crested geckos are being bred in captivity, far more than what Mother Nature is producing on New Caledonia. And with leopard geckos and bearded dragons, they are by far the world's most popular pet lizard. And that's one of the things that I talk about in my vlog channel, about conservation, about how are we protecting certain animals into extinction by not allowing captive breeding initiatives. So if you want to see more on that, the link is in the description below, also in the comments, check that out. But while I was in Wisconsin, and after getting tons of messages from you guys about wanting me to do a Cresty episode, I met with Kyle Salzmann, who was about to tell you everything you've ever wanted to know about crested geckos here on Rainbow Mealworms presents the Reptile Channel Hobby Breeders.
My name is Kyle Salzmann, owner, operator, whatever of Crested Geckos. My wife and I have been doing this for 10 years. I think we started with a pair of crested geckos back in 2007, and since then it has grown to multiple different species, thousands of productions over the years, and we just really enjoy it. It's more of a hobby for us, definitely not out to make money. It is, sometimes that can be a perk of it at times, but otherwise we just enjoy doing this. Right now we're sitting currently at about somewhere around 200 total animals, and I think 13 or 14 different species. So that's kind of what we try to work with, and not get any bigger than that, just because we both have full-time jobs ourselves, and we want to keep it a hobby. We don't want it to be another job. Actually, I've been interested in geckos ever since I was a young boy. I remember watching this show on the Discovery Channel called Wild Discovery with my grandparents. And I remember back when I was maybe only 4 or 5 years old, they had one of the Australian leaftails on the episode. And I saw it for, I mean, it was maybe only a couple second clip, that was it. And after that I was kind of hooked on, I was already hooked on reptiles, but at that point I knew that I liked geckos. But it's not cheap. I mean, it's kind of it's paid itself off over the years, but as I kept track, I think it took probably the first 5 years to actually break even as far as buying animals, buying caging, going to shows, travel, all sorts of stuff like that. And then the animals paid for that after about 5 years. So it's definitely not something to get into to pay the bills and live life off of. It's a part-time hobby. So, and that's how we'd like to keep it. This is a crested gecko, Coralophus ciliatus. This is one of our older females. It was actually produced by our good friends Andrew and Sarah Gilpin of LAC Herps down in Iowa City. We've had her, I think, probably around 9 years or so. She's been with us quite a long time, actually. Been a really good, solid producer, really good pattern and head structure and everything else, and her offspring have been fantastic over the years. What you're looking for with crested geckos is good head structure, nice kind of square, blocky head. That's good structure, good full body size. That is about it as far as the appearance and stuff. Their skin and crest are actually fleshy. It's not rigid like what you'd find with like a bearded dragon or something like that. It's actually very soft skin. They have very fine scales, and they come in multiple different colors and patterns. What most people refer to as morphs, even though that is kind of a misnomer, because when you're talking about things like ball pythons that have true genetic morphs, then you're getting into something different. These were called morphs, more or less just color traits and the appearance. This one you could probably consider a pinstripe with some harlequin markings on the sides. This would be what I consider kind of like a white spotted harlequin. Her name is Gamora. She's one that we produced ourselves from a couple different years of selective breeding. So this is kind of something that we worked on, kept the best of the best, and actually her offspring turned out pretty fantastic also. So again, just kind of a product of selective breeding. Just something that we put our time and energy into, using as good of lines as we possibly could and producing it over time to get that high white and with the white spotting as best as we can get. At the time that we produced her, there wasn't many of these in the hobby actually that looked like this. So we were very fortunate that we ended up with something that looked like this at the time that we did. Not saying that we were pioneers or at the forefront by any means, but it seemed that we had something good going on, and we were proud of that. And this is probably one of our lines that we are most proud of, just because we feel that we put in most of the energy and work to get it to this point. All right, this is the offspring of Gamora, and this one we've taken even further with some more selective breeding, getting more white spotting and what people refer to as dripping, where the white spots are coming down off of the pinstripe, the lateral lines on the back that create the dorsum. This one is possibly one of the better productions that we've had over the years, just because the amount of pattern, the amount of white, and we feel that she is one of the best for us, at least. We're very proud of one like this, and again, just from selective breeding and pairing as good as what we can, we have come up with this one. So no name for it yet or anything, it's still growing. It's got a long ways to go, but definitely looking very nice so far. The girl that I'm holding right now is Mira, and Mira is one of my favorite productions, honestly. And the reason is we went such extreme Harlequin patterning that it went basically baseless. There is very, very thin line of base coloration left, which is typically, you know, like a dark chocolate color or like a black. And this girl has a lot of white and yellow patterning to the point that all of that disappeared. So I am very, very happy with this because it's as extreme Harlequin as you can get, to the point that it looks almost like it's patternless, like it's plain, but it is actually so patterned that it makes it look that way. Right now she's not fully fired up, which in Crested Gecko terms means that it's at its most vibrant coloration, but you can see that she has a lot of light coloration coming up from the belly area, a lot of yellow from the top, and only a very thin line of dark base coloration really left to her. So what I'll show you next then is just a juvenile Crested Gecko. This one is actually already 2 months old. It's growing well, feeding well, and they start off smaller than this. I mean, they hatch out pretty little at about 1.2 to 1.6 grams on average for us, which is not very big at all. So you'll see that this one is a little bit bigger already with a couple months of growth, and it's actually got really good patterning and structure and everything showing already for this age. Typically the juveniles are a little bit more flighty, a little bit more jumpy. They take a little while to tame down. So if you are a Crested Gecko owner or somebody just getting into it, don't get discouraged if they are very jumpy when their juveniles are young. That's just kind of part of their nature. So Crested Gecko feeding is fairly easy for the most part. What we have been feeding for years and years now, ever since we got into it for the past 10 years, is Repashy products. The Repashy superfoods have been fantastic for us. We enjoy using the Mango Super Blend or the Repashy Classic. Thing is though, is that sometimes Crested Geckos, they tend to, I don't want to say they go off of feeding like you'd see with some snakes and stuff like that, but they'll kind of get picky. They'll get used to a certain diet. So we've also incorporated some of the Pangea diets into our feeding rotation, as well as mixing 50-50. Repashy and Pangea both have fantastic products. Both of these come as a dry powder. It's got all the minerals and nutrients and everything that the geckos need, and you just mix it with water, and it comes to be kind of like a fruit paste, maybe like a barbecue sauce consistency. And that's how you feed it to your geckos. You put it in a plastic bowl or a porcelain or ceramic cup, and we recommend you feeding live insects also. Many people feed either crickets or dubia roaches, hisser roaches. Other things you can feed are hornworms, silkworms, things like that. Shop around, do the best that you can, ask questions and stuff, but I would definitely recommend either the Repashy or the Pangea diets. Something that a lot of people don't really know about crested geckos is that they actually can lose their tails in a kind of flight instinct sort of thing, but they are one of just a few species of geckos in the world that do not grow them back. We have seen instances online over the years of some little like fleshy nubs regrowing, but they will not regrow their tail like most of the other species do. Once they lose it, it is gone forever. And that can happen in many different scenarios, actually. This guy lost his tail during breeding, actually. The female and him kind of had a quarrel, and she bit his tail and he lost it. We've heard, at least, of people having their dogs coming into the gecko room, or their cat coming into the gecko room and scaring the crested geckos. They'll drop their tail because of that, because obviously they think that it's a predator. Otherwise, loud sounds, fireworks, thunder can be a big one. Like heavy storms. Friends over the years have lost numerous tails in their collections just because of loud noises. So it does happen, and unfortunately it doesn't ever regrow. They can live fine without it. It does have the prehensile tip, so it's good for climbing. It's good for as like a rudder when they jump, guiding them through the branches and stuff like that. But for the most part, they are completely fine without it. And at most wild-caught crested geckos, or geckos that they've at least seen in the wild in New Caledonia, don't even have tails at all. So at what point they lost their tail, maybe it was early, maybe it was later on in life, but they seem to thrive just fine without it. So with crested geckos, not unlike most of the other gecko species, they lay 2 eggs every month during the breeding season. Crested geckos can lay anywhere between, I would say, 6 to 20 eggs a season, sometimes less, sometimes more. They are quite prolific breeders, and it's usually always 2 eggs. On occasion you only get 1. On a very rare occasion you'll get 3, but it's almost always 2 eggs every month. Once they lay their eggs, we actually dig up the eggs and we will put them in incubation media inside these tackle trays. Tackle trays have all the dividers and everything, which allows us to keep eggs from each female separate. So then when they hatch, we know exactly what lines they came from. We will just soak the clay mixture that's in there. And this stuff we bought from Repashy. It's called Repashy Super Hatch. The thing with crested gecko eggs is that they actually are a soft egg. They're not a hard egg like what you'd find with the leaf tails or some of the other species where it doesn't expand. You can incubate just at room temperature, 70, 72 degrees. For us, we will cycle them through the winter. We will separate all the pairs so then they're not breeding all year long and producing eggs all year long. Luckily enough in Wisconsin, with the changing of the weather, day-night cycles, things like that, our geckos kind of shut down by maybe mid-September to October. So after that, we don't really get eggs until we pair them up again in February or March, and then we start seeing eggs again in March or April, which is perfect for us because then it gives our geckos, 5 to 6 months of a break, and 6 to 7 months of laying eggs and breeding. Crested geckos really should be roughly 2 to 2.5 years of age before you breed them. That's the best time they have reached maturity. A lot of people will actually base their age or their maturity on their size, and that is incorrect. It used to be that crested geckos should be 35 grams before you breed them. Nowadays, they are expected to be between 45 and 50 grams a lot of times, especially for females. Males can be bred a little bit smaller. Females, though, need to be a little bit bigger and older to be able to handle egg production. They need the calcium reserves. They need body size to be able to pass the eggs. Otherwise, you start running into calcium issues and just general health issues overall. What I like to tell people is when they ask or when they find out, like coworkers and stuff, when they find out that I keep geckos and the number that I keep, and that I'm not just an average person that has maybe 1 in a tank, I say that the gecko hobby, or the reptile hobby in general actually, but there's a hobby for everything. People collect stamps, they like coins, they like motorcycles, they like jogging or hiking or photography or whatever. We are just into geckos, and there's a whole world that surrounds that most people don't know about. So unless, I don't want to say you have to be in an inner circle, but you kind of have to look into it, and the whole world will open up. You can start talking to people, and you'll find out more than what you could have imagined existed. We meet new people every day. We learn new stuff every day. So it's just part of it. You don't know it's out there until you actually find it.